Welcome to What's the Matter, the official Mindspan podcast. Today is the final part to our 3-part mini-series all around living your life with purpose. And my dad and I are going to be talking to you around the process of goal setting and how to make this as foolproof as possible for yourself. Thanks, I really hope you enjoy.
So I'm back with my fabulous and glamorous co-host, Mr. Dad. Hello, Dad.
Good morning, Em. How's things with you?
Very well. They're all very good. As you can see, I've got my little Christmas display.
Okay. Very Christmassy, like it.
No, well,
poinsettias there.
They are. There's some poinsettias, and I found a very sweet little local. It's not a garden centre. It's a little plant shop with loads of homeware in it, just on Brentwood High Street. So I bought my little tree at the weekend.
Would you like to give them a shout out or not?
Yeah, they're called the Greenhouse Brentwood. Very beautiful store for anyone that's local. And they're very helpful in there. And they even have an in-house schnauzer who had a little yellow roll neck on yesterday. He was very cute with a new haircut. So yeah, I actually bought quite a lot from them, but can't fit it all in my backdrop. But yeah, how was your weekend?
Yeah, good, thank you. Got to the driving range.
Yeah.
Golf is back, but the weather's been a bit iffy since golf was readily available to us all again. So at the very least, Mum and I went and had a bucket of balls yesterday and hadn't swung a club for 6 weeks, which is obviously the longest we've gone this year without swinging a club, so to speak. So yeah, it's good to do that. Watched a bit of footy.
Mm-hmm.
Norwich City had a good win.
Come on, you yellows.
Come on, you Canaries, absolutely. Yeah, nice, and just bit by bit getting ready for Christmas, really.
Yeah, well, so today we are actually back for part 3 of our 3-part mini-series around living with purpose. This is our final episode today. Not ever, don't worry, guys.
Ever. Just in this mini-series.
Yeah.
You could have got an alarm there for a moment, Em.
I know. I had some heartbreaks somewhere in the world.
Indeed.
No, so yeah, this is a final part to living with purpose. So in the first episode of this week, sort of covered the importance of defining or being very clear on our current reality. We talked around the importance of life audits and actually just how can we get clear on the current life that we're living, obviously to identify areas for improvement or showcase kind of where we might be happy or slightly less happy. In our second episode, we talked around the importance of personal values and the role that they can play in actually living with purpose and, even feeding into what we're doing today, episode 3, setting goals. So yeah, that's kind of where we're going with this today, isn't it? So I guess before we go through our process of how best we would advise people to set goals, just handing over to you, Dad, why do you think it's really important for people to actually set goals?
It's a big subject, Em, and much has been written on goal setting over not just a few years or decades, but over the centuries, really. We believe that actually goal setting is incredibly useful for us as a species, as people, because of the way the brain works.
Mm-hmm.
We've probably touched on this in a previous episode of the podcast, but the brain is sort of very directional, very outcome orientated in terms of how it quite naturally functions. So goals aren't magical, ethereal things. We don't think, anyway. I know there's things like The Secret. So there's lots of other aspects of think about stuff and it may happen. But from our position, which is from a more psychological backdrop, we know the brain is a very directional, end goal orientated mechanism, for want of a better term. And what we tend to think about and focus on, your brain tends to take you towards, or you'll do more often, if that makes sense. So the more you tend to think about and focus on something a particular way, the more likely you are to create it or to do it or to move in that direction. And that's perfectly natural. That's the way our brain perfectly naturally functions. So based on that, it's incredibly valuable to set really positively constructed, well thought through goals. Because they're magical, ethereal things that may happen. If you go through a robust process and set goals, and not just then put them in a drawer and don't look at them for 6 months, but you live them, you focus on them daily, we can then be utilizing the way the brain naturally functions in a way which is going to help us to more likely, there's no guarantee, but more likely create those goals, achieve those goals, or do those things. So yeah, it's predominantly around the directional nature of the human brain, which is why goals are so important.
Well, yeah, and just to sort of touch on this as well, we're technically using this energy anyway.
Yeah,
it's just less focused if you don't have these in place. So you're not needing to go and buy more time or do anything like that. It's just the time that you do have and the way that because every day we're deciding what we want to do, whether some people might think they are or not. Ultimately we're deciding what we want to do each day, what time we get up, what time we do all these different things. So having goals in place is almost just like a bit of it's helping with structure, really, of actually we're living our lives, so why don't we just make sure they go in the direction that we want them to, or
and I'm adding to that, that our brains will take us in a direction anyway.
Exactly.
So based on what we think about and focus on anyway, excuse me, and a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about what they don't want.
Yeah, I know.
Life is, the difficulties that they've got, the challenges around, particularly in lockdown and pandemic, and obviously things are for a lot of people. But it is, as we've said on previous episodes, it's so important what we spend our time thinking about and focusing on. So based on the fact that we tend to move towards what we focus on, if that makes sense, because of the way the brain functions, you do that anyway. So what about if we consciously decide what we're going to focus on?
Yeah. And do it helpfully.
Meander around all over the place without much control or conscious direction. Let's give ourselves conscious direction. And that's one of the things that goals helps us with. Gives us conscious direction to think about and focus on.
Definitely. And because I know we could talk about this forever, for anyone that wants to learn a little bit more around focus, we have done a previous episode on the nature of our focus and why it's important to do this stuff, not just with goal setting, but on a day-to-day basis with the way that we think. So if people want to find out a bit more about that, just please go scroll back and find our I think it was episode 2 maybe. But bringing it back to this today, so obviously, goals are super, super important for creating the life that we want. We've been taking people through our guideline of our quite robust process of setting goals. So this kind of brings us to, step 1, we've established our clear current reality. We've looked at step 2, the importance of our personal values. Now, third step is really that clear future reality that we'd like to create. So how would you advise people listening to actually do that?
So having worked through the first 2 steps or stages, before we start sitting down and writing goals for ourselves, we need to start to get our brain in the place of, I know where I am in terms of life, I know what my values are, now we have permission to start thinking about the future. So we encourage, the way I do this is I look at my life audit, and I look at the areas of my life that I would like to give some attention to, some focus to, and invest some energy in. That can either be because I want to significantly improve them, or it could be that an area of life is working quite well, and I don't want to take my eye off it. I want to at least maintain it. So, because again, we will be moving towards what we tend to think about and focus on. So I'll pick some areas, and then one at a time, I consider each of those areas, and for each of them that I want to focus on and put some energy into, I create what we call a word picture. So I just get a piece of paper and I just have, I clarify what that part of my life would look like and what it would consist of, what I would be doing, who I would be doing it with, the benefits of it all. I create this word picture that has a lot of information in it that represents what that part of my life would look like or be like if I scored it a 10 in terms of my satisfaction. So if I was a 10 out of 10 in terms of my satisfaction, what would that part of my life look like? What would I have been doing? What would I have achieved? What would I have created? Who might have been helping me do it? What the benefits of all of that would be? How that would be impacting other parts of my life? Now, I tend to do that I tend to write a whole lot of different sentences. Some of our clients will do that by creating a mind map. Others I know write 2 or 3 paragraphs. Some other clients I've had at this stage with this exercise will write a story. Some people will create a vision board where you've got visual representations of what you want parts of your life to look like. So I always say to our clients, I don't mind how you do this, what we need to get out of here, out of our head, is on a piece of paper. We need to capture it, or in some way, shape, or form, what a sort of a 9 or a 10 looks like and consists of. And that could be for your fitness, if you choose the fitness aspect of your life. It could be financially, it could be in terms of your home and property, it could be in terms of certain relationships, any of those life areas that we talked about on episode 1 of this little mini series. But it's so important to do this, to get all of that out, because it needs to be your version. What we don't need to be doing, we sometimes might do this to get some ideas, but we believe it's so important that we define and live the life that's important to us, not the one that everyone else tells us we should, not the one that society is trying to influence within you, not the one that shed loads of marketing and media are trying to influence you with, the products you should be buying, if that makes sense. This is our version. And it's really important when we have this, whether you call it a big brain dump or creative ideas session around these different areas of life you want to focus on, that actually you double check that whatever you're creating and capturing is in line with your values.
Yeah.
That's why we created those values in step 2.
Yeah.
Now, for me, this is always, I love this whole process, obviously, and I've worked this over many, many years, over and over and over again. Excuse me. Because after creating word pictures, and we'll talk about how we then translate those into goals, it's then really important that that's my purpose. Those are the things I'm waking up and really thinking about and focusing on and working out every day.
Yeah.
That's my purpose. And my purpose might be quite different to someone else's.
Mm-hmm.
Could be different. Definitely. There could be some similarity, might be some crossover, maybe some difference, So, and I know you've done this, you've worked this process many times. What do you enjoy most when you go through this step around starting to think about your clear future reality and taking certain areas of life and expressing what a 10 would look like for you?
Yeah, there's 2 things here, because there's obviously my experience of doing it myself, but then actually my experience of coaching people through it and seeing a certain thing. So I guess to talk about my experience first, I think it's just, I don't, not to say it's just magical, because I know it sounds really a bit cheesy, but you will never do this and feel rubbish, because we know how directional the brain is, and taking people through the thinking cycle in episode 1, our thoughts influence our emotions, behaviors, and outcomes. When you're thinking about what your life would be like as a 10 out of 10, or what that specific area might be, for example, when I did this, I don't know how many months ago it was, maybe now, just after the beginning of the first ever lockdown, so maybe April time, and at the time I had been quite unclear on how I could move my business forward at the moment with the pandemic, and a lot of unforeseen things happening that I hadn't planned for.
A lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty
in the world, a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity.
Yeah, exactly. And going through this process, I didn't initially think, right, I'm going to have a solution by the end of this of how exactly I'm going to tackle the pandemic. That wasn't really what I initially went into it with. I thought, in a year's time, where would I like my business to be? Where would my time be split across different tasks? How much would I get to... I put everything in my word picture for my business thing, in terms of how regularly I get to speak to you or come back to Norfolk and see you and Mum, because obviously I come back for work stuff sometimes. Yeah. So I must have written a whole page of what a 10 out of 10 would be like for me. And I didn't, you will almost surprise yourself at how clear you suddenly are. I'd say I thought, what would my time split be between the different types of things I'm doing? And then there was going to be new opportunities. And ultimately I got to this end vision of September 2021. And I've told you this, Dad, but I have now a goal set around this, about taking you for dinner at the Shard. And I know that might seem, for some people, that's really not their cup of tea, and I definitely don't do that every day.
We're going for a cup of tea, by the way.
No, we're not. You're just having a bread roll. No, I had this, I became very clear on wanting to take you there for a meal as a symbol of where we've taken Mindspan this year, and how the business has grown, and in order to be able to take you out for that meal, well, I need to generate a lot more opportunity. I need to it led to so many other things as to having this. I just felt incredible when I did it, to be honest with you. And it really helped me with being like, this is exactly what I want my life to look like. Visualization is so powerful for for us. But not just visualization, but then going, okay, well, how do I need to do that? Because there's some things out there around visualization that says just think about it and it'll happen, and that's not really the case. You need to have a plan. So yeah, I mean, I felt amazing doing it, and felt like to be honest, obviously, where I know we're going to go into how we then set goals, but my life just changed the day I did that. And that kind of, when I say there's two things, obviously me, and then how I see that with my clients, watching that emotion and that journey unfold with somebody else is still so powerful. And seeing them go through that, and like one of my clients recently, I might have mentioned this in the last episode, I'm not sure if I did, around her being able to buy her first home. And when we were first coaching together, she thought that was such an if I'd said to her, end of 2020 you'll have your first home, she would have laughed me out the door and told me that was ridiculous. And through going through this process, setting those goals, and her working out what needed to happen every single month in order to get there, she's in the process of exchanging contracts at the minute. And that's why I think these are so powerful, because having this word picture almost gives you a taste of it. And if it doesn't feel powerful enough when you do it, then it's not the right thing to do. Sorry, that was
that's really important, because it has, what we can say is for something to occur or to be achieved or to be shaped or created out here in the world, it has to happen in our head first. So all we're really doing is, just because we create a word picture doesn't guarantee we'll go on to achieve it. But because we are thinking about what a 10 looks like or represents for us, and how we've, the things we've done to get there, what that feels like when we do get there, who we're there with, excuse me, we're creating internally in our head a representation of our version of success. And as you say, if that's something that's really important to you, you start to create the emotions inside yourself as if it were really happening. So that, and we know that emotion drives behavior. Go back to things. So actually what we're seeking to do with these word pictures is get real clarity about the future we're trying to shape, create, or experience, and to get excited about it, or passionate about it, or motivated by it, enthused about it. The amount of people I see in the workplace, in organizations, who have their objectives from their appraisal or their PDP or some sort of targets they're responsible for, and they're not really engaged in it. They're not excited by it. It's a bit dull. And then we wonder why they're not working towards those things. So we have an amazing ability when we get really focused on the things that mean something to us. That's where the energy comes from. That's where the fuel comes from. So these word pictures are really important to create before we even start thinking about setting goals.
Well, I think I was about to say, I think this is one of the most important steps, but actually I don't think that. I think they're all equally important, because you need to know your current reality, have your personal values, and then get to this to be able to get to this point. But I think there are a lot of people out there that say they write goals, and I come across a lot of people that go, goals, I set them all the time. Oh yeah, I've got loads, and they've never done any of this stuff. It's almost just a to-do list of, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get promoted, and it's just as dull as a to-do list. And I think without, as I say, especially the word picture stuff, we call it a word picture because it's just creating through words such a visual representation of what it's going to feel like. If you were just going to say, I'm going to get promoted, that might, that might still be nice.
It's a whim, it's a bit of a dream, it's a bit of a fancy. But actually that's what quite a lot of people have. They have fairly unsubstantial wishes. And just on that theme, sorry, I cut in a bit, but you're just sparking stuff in my head, and if I don't mention it, I might forget it. So I think this is going to sound really harsh, all right, but, and I'm not slighting people with this, I just think that it's a key part of fairly Western culture for a lot of people, but not all. I think most people make themselves really busy in life, too busy to think about life. They get up every day, get back on the hamster wheel, if that makes sense, moves really quickly. They get off and go back home and go to sleep and then do it again tomorrow. They're doing life but not thinking about it enough. a lot of people. Some people do give a little bit of thought to life. They'd quite like this to happen. They'd quite like that to happen. They hope this might occur or that might occur. And I think there's quite a lot of people who would quite like certain things to happen in their life, as long as they don't have to get off their backside and go and really work at it, just hoping and that it might just drop in their lap next week. Now, that's not going to happen, is it? Let's be really honest. The challenge we have is, life goes really quickly, really quickly. I've said before, when you and Ollie came into our world, the world of me and Mum, and that's, Ollie's 30 now and you're 28, that seems 5 minutes.
Hey.
That seems 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem 28. It's going. Life is rapidly passing by. So unless we start to just stop and think about what we're doing and what's really important to us, and what would I get excited about in terms of getting up tomorrow morning and going and working out and achieving, we just drift through life without too much focus, without a lot of clarity, back on the hamster wheel, just hoping that something might change next week. Well, it isn't going to change probably unless you do something.
Yeah.
We have and you've experiencing with the various clients you've been coaching for quite a while now, as I have. When we really take people through this stuff and they really get clarity and they get excited about the right things, actually they invest all of their considerable energy every day on the right stuff. Doesn't guarantee you'll achieve your goals, but they become much more likely, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as I say, we will go through the actual process in a short while, but I don't even think this just applies to people. I think, obviously, I have a marketing background, and I know in my old role, my old life of full-time employment in the corporate world, I was working with very big clients. Now I see a lot of people want to have a business. They don't think about necessarily what they want their business to be doing. It's just straight to the numbers. And it's like, I don't care about some of this stuff. I just want to sell what I need to sell. And I think they don't actually have this clear, almost this sort of goal process actually for their business. It's just straight to the, in the context that we just said about someone just having on a bit of paper, I just want to get promoted. It's like, I just want to be successful.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. But how are you going to do that? And that's what sometimes this process said. I think you were right. I don't think it is harsh in saying some people. I think it's quite a true reality, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And you're not
people don't know
saying everyone's like it. It's just there's a lot of. But I think it also comes with people not having the clarity on how to do things. So it might not necessarily be I'm too lazy to do that, because they wouldn't have the passion around wanting it enough if they were being lazy. But knowing how, maybe feeling like they might want something but don't know how to make them want it even more or be really clear, and that's obviously what this process does.
But with this, ultimately it's a 4-step process. So clear current reality, values, clear future reality with these word pictures, and then goal setting. Those 4 steps we work with, for years I've worked with organizations that we take through that process, just in an organizational sense rather than just a personal sense. So these steps work. We know they work. And you're discovering with more and more clients that you work with, not just individuals that you coach, but companies that you work with, some of those are actually investing a lot of energy every day without a lot of clarity.
Yeah, and
I know that again, it sounds a bit unkind. That just seems foolish. We
they're
have
just on that hamster wheel, like you said. They're running around all day. They're busy. They're very busy, but they wouldn't be thinking about. Yeah, exactly. They might be thinking about tomorrow or what presentations to do next week or those things, but nobody's zooming out and actually looking at the bigger picture of what do we need to be doing today that's going to impact the next 2 years.
Yeah. Well, as life is going quickly, I just decided years ago with what I continue to learn and what we learn in the business and how we work with our clients. I don't want to get to 90, or I do want to get to 90, but I don't want to get to 90 or older, old age, and look back and say I wish.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have sorted myself out. I wish I'd have. I never want to have thoughts like I wish I hadn't done that job that I hated for so long, or I wish I'd have had the courage to start a business, or I wish I'd have traveled more, or I wish I'd have spent more time with my kids, or I don't want a life like that. So rather than potentially ending up in old age having those sort of regrets, put thought into life as you go through it.
Yeah.
What is your clear current reality? What are your core values? What do you want aspects of your life to look like? What does a 10 represent? Then you start to use goal setting as a mechanism to help you stand a chance of creating those things.
Yeah, definitely. No, well, obviously I agree with you because I do this for a living as well. But I think, and I always say this because you and I could speak at great length about this stuff for ages, but we wouldn't want a 24-hour podcast, or maybe we do. People let us know.
Pilot one in the new year and just see how
to
stay on.
Yeah, we'll see how many people watch us.
Excuse me.
But no, so actually we've talked about all of this potential process for quite like a lot of this episode. So I think actually now, let's go into, so how do we set them? What rules, or I say rules, but what guidelines do we have for setting a foolproof goal? What would that fourth step be?
We have, as a methodology, goal setting has been a real interest to me over 2 decades. So I've studied lots of research on goal setting, different methodologies for goal setting, tried and evolved our own methodology around goal setting. We within Mindspan have created our own methodology called the 4x4 method. Now that's pretty extensive, and probably we haven't got enough time on this podcast to go through every single element of that 4x4 methodology. But just to pick out some really key elements, having created some word pictures for different areas of life based on what a 9 or a 10 would look like or consist of in terms of satisfaction of those areas of life, we then go back into those word pictures, and you've created a lot of content. The great thing is you create a lot of content, and you then pull out some of those key bits of content around certain outcomes or processes, and then create goals for those things. Okay, so for me, or for us, goals shouldn't be long, wordy manuscripts. They need to be fairly tight, fairly concise, but having all the right sort of information in. We always encourage people to write goals express them in the present tense. So we write the goal as if we are standing or at some point in the future doing it, or achieving it, or creating it, or experiencing it. So of course, all goals are about the future, but we don't put them in a future tense. So simplistically, we wouldn't have a goal that said, in December 2021, I will achieve X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
What we would state it in the present tense, so it would sound more like this: it is December 2021, and I am just achieving X, Y, or Z. Does that make sense? Now, of course, it would be a little bit fuller than that, but we always encourage people to express them in the present tense. One of the key reasons for that is, you mentioned a while ago that visualization is a very powerful mechanism. So expressing a goal in the present tense helps us more easily to imagine it, to visualize it, because I'm actually expressing it with words as if I am there at the time. That's powerful. Briefly, because I think we have mentioned this on previous podcasts around the subconscious. The subconscious cannot differentiate. It can't tell the difference between something that you really experience and something that you imagine experiencing. So when we express a goal in the present tense, it's easier to imagine it, stroke visualize it, or mentally simulate it. And actually, my subconscious reacts or responds as if I'm actually really there doing it. And if you've really carefully thought it through, as we've described, that should be very motivational, should be very emotionally engaging. So we always put goals in the present tense. Obviously, we express the goal really clearly with real clarity. So if there are some numbers of measure involved, put the numbers in there. If you are very precisely doing something or achieving something, then make sure it's precise. If you're relating to some of the process that got you there, make that really clear and precise as well too. And ultimately, always put a date on it. So when are you planning to have done this by? There are some other elements, but actually for simplicity in this podcast, I think that's probably enough for people. So you lift out of the word picture, which has got a lot of content in it, you lift some of their key bits out and you shape them into a goal. And the easiest way to get into present tense structuring in terms of how you express your goal is you start off the goal with it is and the date. So it is December 2021, and I have just achieved X, Y, or Z and feels great, or I'm on the holiday of a lifetime with my family. We've had a great day today doing it. So you just describe it as simply as possible. That's probably the easiest way to get into present tense structuring.
Yeah, I mean, I know I mentioned earlier on my word picture of taking you for dinner. Mine, just how that would live as a goal is as an example for anyone listening, is it's September 2021. I have just taken Dad for dinner at the Shard to celebrate the success of Mindspan over the last year. I mean, I elaborate on it for what we've physically done, but I won't share that on here. But so that's kind of as explicitly as it is. I mean, even in my word picture, I've written about what we order or what I order, what I'm going to wear. So when I say that goal, even though I haven't got a whole list of I'm wearing this, I've ordered this, I know I am because I've already got it on my word picture.
The thing is, what the goal then does, the shorter goal, it's a stimulus or a trigger for all of that word picture to come back into your head, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so what we're not saying here is go and create a few goals in this way in the present tense and then write them down and put them in a drawer and don't look at them for 6 months. My goals are on little cards. So a 6-inch by 4-inch, I'm showing my age now, cards, like a postcard size. I write them on my cards. They go everywhere with me. They're in my daily journal, so I see them every day. And this is really creating the goals in this well thought through, considered way is important, but then it's really important that we live our goals.
Yeah.
And if you put them in a drawer and don't look at them, you're not going to be living them.
No, so exactly.
We encourage people, a bit like affirmations and self-talk that we've expressed on a previous podcast. I think as a bare minimum, for 2 minutes in the morning when we wake up, 2 to 3 minutes, we should be looking at those goals, reading, saying them, imagining them. You're there. Just do that for 2 or 3 minutes in the morning. And if we do that again for 2 or 3 minutes later in the evening before we go to bed, after a while, after working with that and making that a habit over a number of days, you then probably, when I'm walking the dog, I don't need to see my cards. I can just think, I'm walking the dog. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes thinking about my goals. And I just do it. Mentally simulate them over and over and over again. So the outcomes and also the process. And I think it's really important not just to have outcome goals. Because there are some people who would want the promotion.
Yeah, but don't know how to get that.
That's an outcome. But they're probably not going to start working towards that in a focused way because they haven't sorted out the process.
Yeah.
What are the key things they need to do? When are they going to do those? How are they going to measure that? How can they visualize doing it? Doing undertaking the process as well as visualizing the outcome. And because I personally have been working this methodology for so long, I can't imagine a life where I'm not doing it.
I can't now either, to be honest with you. And the thing is, because when I first explain this to people, no, this isn't something we're all naturally doing and are used to doing, but it takes such a small amount of time to do. And we know that the more we do something, the easier it is to do. Because I've had people say to me, you probably just find that easy because your dad's always told you about it. I think, no, when I was a teenager, and obviously you've always talked to me about personal development, but my journey's only really the last, very seriously, 18 months to 2 years, and know that
you've dabbled with these things.
Yeah, I dabbled with them, but I didn't do them every day. I didn't do them every day. I'd think once every 6 months when I wasn't feeling myself, I should probably look at those. But, I then look at my goals and think, God, they're so irrelevant because my life had then changed again. So now, as I say, it might not feel natural at first, but what to me, I think to take 2 minutes at the beginning of my day and the end of my day is such a tiny ask for what happens.
Yeah, and you're using those little time slots to get focused.
Yeah,
and when you're thinking about those goals in that way, you're focusing on it. You're focusing on your success. You're focusing on what you want your life to look like.
Yeah.
And of course, that doesn't guarantee it's going to happen, but it makes it much more likely because you're using your brain in a much more helpful way.
Yeah, but I mean, even as an example I won't go on too much because I know it's going to be long, but I've had a goal around, when I set my goal around owning a house, because obviously I have a flat at the moment. I love my flat to pieces, but I can't wait to live somewhere where Reese, my boyfriend, and I buy somewhere and we have a garden because I don't yet have a garden, and I love plants, hence my tree. But I've got when I wrote my goal around exactly when that's going to happen for me, buying that house, or when I want that to happen, how the house is going to look, feel, smell, everything. I now reading that every single morning, and every single night, I am, as a consequence, I didn't actually consequently go, I'm going to start saving more money. Wasn't my initial plan. But because of knowing what the process is for me to get there with a house, because I've gone through the process, I need to put X percent away every month to get me to that dream. So you just, by having these goals, not only do you you feel more purpose with how you're living your life, which is obviously the whole point of this mini series. So as a byproduct of that, I think you tend to feel happier. You tend to feel calmer because you're more in control of the life you want to live.
Yeah.
And you're just more proactively taking steps towards creating that, even if I just think it's, as I say, such a small amount of time on a day-to-day basis to actually, you're going to be living that time anyway. Why not just take 2 minutes to, I always think if you can clean your teeth, which again takes about 2 minutes every, morning and night. If you can find the time to clean your teeth, which is probably such an unnatural, no one really loves probably cleaning their teeth. Sorry for any dentists out there. But I think this is, I just sit there with my cup of coffee in the morning and just think, this is what I'm going to do today. Yeah, and I love doing it. And as you say, I can't really imagine a life without that now. It's sort of, I'd probably feel a little lost if I didn't, because that purpose is not so clear. But I think you've done, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, part of that morning and evening routine that you're talking about for 2 or 3 minutes is to read them, say them. But what we're looking for those sentences to do is to evoke in our head the mental simulation. So that's really what we're looking for it to do. And because we're mentally simulating something that means a lot to us, and it's a 9 or a 10, it feels good. But probably on the back of this, just worth mentioning 1 or 2 extra things. So some people often say to me, how many goals should we set? Well, there's no exact science. I would always just say, don't set too few, don't set too many. Focus is very powerful. If you only have 1 goal, you might well work towards that goal, but you might pay for it somewhere else. So a key example I often use is, some people are very focused on their work and career, understandably so, and that drives them to do 70 hours every week for years.
Yeah.
Now, that might mean their work goes well. It might mean they get promotions. But whilst they're doing that 70 hours a week every week, what's happening to their relationships at home? What's happening to their health? What's happening to their fitness? What's happening to other parts of their lives? Now, too narrow a focus, you can sometimes pay for that in life negatively. So don't have too few goals. Obviously, don't have too many, because this is all about focus. You don't want to give yourself 20 goals, in our view. Generally speaking, what tends to work for me, and obviously not everyone's exactly the same, I tend to have half a dozen, 5 or 6 key goals. That has been up to 8, and it has been down to 4. And that's what works for me. Think about a number of goals, but not too many or not too few. And I think it's always important to keep goals balanced. So what we mean by balanced is, have a number of goals, but set them across different areas of life. Set them across different time scales. So it could be some short term, some medium term, some long term. And also set goals with differing levels of challenge. So, I'm all one for having a stretch goal or 2, but don't make all of your goals stretch goals. Put 1 or 2 out that are really going to push you and stretch you, but maybe put some quick, easy wins in there as well too, or some medium challenge goals. And actually, when you've achieved some people say to me, when you've achieved some goals, what do you do then? Set some more. This is just a continuous process. Just keep, going back to the life audit, clear current reality, do that every 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 times a year. Keep checking your life. And when you get, when you decide you want to work at certain things or improve certain areas, you then, check your core values, create a word picture, and then create a goal or 2 around that area. Just keep working it. It's not just to be done once and then leave. Just keep doing it. I know, even when I'm in my 90s, there'll be certain things I want to create in my life or experience in my life. Even when I'm 90, if I want to live in my 90s with purpose.
Yeah.
Or in your 50s or your 30s or your 20s or as a teenager, whatever. We want to be living our life with purpose. Rather than let the world decide what our purpose is, because that's what most people do. Wait for everyone else to tell them. Decide yourself and then live it and work it.
No, definitely. I think, well, yeah, it's great stuff, this. I think it's such as I say, very, very, I've never done this process and felt worse for doing it. It's a really powerful thing to take yourself through. And as we've said already, we're already living our lives. We have 1,440 minutes every single day. I got told that a lot as a child.
You did? That got repeated over and over again?
Yeah. So So why don't we choose how we want to spend them? And hopefully this mini series will really help people to do that. So yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Dad.
Pleasure,
I've loved doing this mini series. And we're going to be back again in another 2 weeks with something brand new, TBC. You'll be on the edge of your seat. Oh, on the edge of
sorry. That's a blooper. That used to go in the Christmas blooper.
You'll all be on the edge of your sheets.
Well, actually, I thought it was something else. But
yeah, I know. Well, it nearly was. On the edge of your seats. You'll all be on the edge of your seats.
Yeah.
Oh dear. On that note, that's probably...
I think you need a new goal around your enunciation.
Yeah, maybe. You could probably try saying that word properly. Enunciation. Sean Connery. Yes. But no, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll be back again soon. And if anyone has any questions themselves going through this process, we're always here to help. So yeah, we'll be back soon. But thank you, Dad. And
see you soon, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching the final part to our 3-part mini-series all around living your life with purpose. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to give us a thumbs up and to subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and my dad and I will be back again in 2 weeks with a fresh episode.